the CEO of OneID. How are you doing?
Great, thank you.
He's going to speak with us a little bit about two-factor authentication. There's been a lot of incidents recently in the press about Twitter, WordPress, a lot of user passwords being hacked. And then the next step a lot of these companies have made is to say, oh, we've implemented two-factor, implement that and things will be better. How true is this?
Yeah, it seems it's been a common response for everybody to go out and set up two-factor auth in response to a data breach. And the sad reality, I guess, for all of us consumers who are having our usernames and passwords stolen is it wouldn't have done much. And that's a function of, for the last 5-10 years, things used to get stolen kind of one by one in our browsers and our devices, but all the recent breaches are happening at the website side, and they're stealing 10 million of them. So having set up two-factor authentication wouldn't have done very much to prevent the hackers being able to take the 10 million usernames and passwords.
Mm-hmm. And can you go a little bit into what two-factor will help with? What is it defend against?
Sure. So there's some very good use cases for two-factor auth. Phishing, malware have been around and are still thriving, unfortunately, as attacks, and people are being very successful. It's just basic stealing of money. So two-factor is actually very effective as a deterrent to basic phishing, basic malware that gets on a single device, which are some of the simpler, more well-known exploits. Some of the things that it's less helpful with are there's already a series, just as the websites were all looking to, expand and add two-factor auth to, give greater security. Well, the hackers also have already started to evolve, and in particular, there's been a series of Eurograbber was a specific piece of malware that was written to steal money from banks, and it was specifically written to exploit the SMS. So the two-factor authentication would have been useless in context of Eurograbber. Mm-hmm. There's a couple other exploits that two-factor authentication would not have been successful in stopping that have already happened. In Australia, the Australian Telecoms Union has already told the banks to stop relying on SMS as a two-factor authentication. There's already malware that's been written to intercept that and exploit it. And I think one of my favorite ones that I've seen in the clever camp is good old social engineering. And there's a documented case in India where after someone is able to obtain a stolen username and password, they're going to their local telecom store and with a simple good old fake ID, obtaining a SIM card for that user's phone, they'll log into the bank and improve the two-factor authentication on the falsified SIM card, and in a couple hours your bank account's cleared out. So there's some real problems that two-factor authentication will not be able to solve.
Okay. And then giving this, when you take into consideration the benefits and the limitations of two-factor, when should it and shouldn't it be opt-in? I mean, Google has had it for a long time. Of course, it's opt-in. They have so many users. But, I'm sure banking transactions might be something where you want it to be necessary.
Absolutely. So high assurance security, we've all figured out, and I think the world's figured out, that the phone is a really nice thing to replace the security industry having to issue hardware, which is historically what we've relied on for two-factor as a second factor. That's a real benefit for two-factor auth, and we can now use a second communications channel to approve high assurance or secure things. So some common examples we're seeing are things like wire transfer approval, things like brokerage confirmations, or things like adding a new address for an e-commerce vendor, something along those lines, or sending yourself a new credit card to a new address. Those types of transactions, which we, for convenience purposes, have readily enabled on internet sites, we all, I think, would benefit from a little bit more security of having an independent channel to confirm those types of things. You also touched on opt-in, and I think it's a real interesting question. It's been kind of a vogue response, if you will, to set up two-factor authentication in response to a data breach. Most of the sites have done it, the big tech sites, Google and Apple and Evernote and others have all made it opt-in. And if it's opt-in, the users, by some of their own admissions, the actual usage of two-factor auth is in the low single-digit percentages. So you're not protecting 90 some odd percent of your users by simply turning two-factor on and making it opt-in.
Well, thank you so much. We'll have to wrap it up with that. Again, I'm here with Alex Dahl. He is the CEO of OneID. I'm Danielle Walker. Hope to see you next time.